Welcome to Midweek, Experiments in Faithfulness. This is a weekly facilitated spiritual practice with a Quaker flavor and an experimental ethos. My name is Kat Green, and I'm a program fellow here at Beacon Hill Friends House, which is a Quaker center for learning and action and a residential community of about 20 people who live according to Quaker values. Tonight, we have Blaine Saito with the practice Reflections on Creation. In Genesis, the first book of the Hebrew Bible, there are two versions of creation. They don't follow the same timeline, they share different accounts of how the earth and humans were created, and they may even contradict each other. So if we take the Bible as an integrated whole, what do we do with what appears to be two different accounts that don't work well together? Rooted in Jewish tradition and theology, this midweek will help us explore ways of making meaning of these two stories. Now, I'm excited to introduce you to Blaine. Blaine Saito is a current resident of the Beacon Hill Friends House and serves as the treasurer of the organization. Blaine is currently an assistant professor of law at Northeastern University School of Law, where his research focuses in the area of taxation. Again, welcome. We're happy you've joined us. Blaine, it's all yours.
A little bit of what is the motivation of what's going on. Kat sort of summarized it in the program. We have two different creation stories in the Hebrew Bible. And within the Jewish tradition, there's a sense of taking the Bible as a whole. Now, people will tell you that they're different accounts because they're different sort of authors, as it were, to the Bible. The first chapter is written by sort of the E author for the name of God that's used, Elohim, and the other is J for the tetragrammaton, Yud-K, Vav-K, often translated into English as Lord. But there's something else that I think is important. I think if we take the Bible seriously as a foundational text, it has to mean something. And it's also very strange. Within Jewish tradition, a lot of the focus is on what are called mitzvot, or commandments, what God tells Jews to do and how to live our lives. These are things like keeping kosher, Shabbat, and other sort of more ethical things like, don't go around murdering people and stuff like that. So why does it, Rashi, who's one of the great commentators whom I included on the source sheet, which I think Kat will pass on in the chat, Rashi says that in the very beginning, his very first commentary on the Bible, on chapter 1, verse 1, is why does it begin with this? Why does it not begin with the first commandment in the Bible, which is in Exodus, this month shall be unto you the first of the months, i.e. the first month, the month that Passover is in. So why does it not do that? And there's something that I think is really important in looking at the creation story here. Within a lot of Jewish thought, there are sort of three big events that sort of frame things for the Jewish people. Creation, which sets out things and how they operate. Covenant, our relationship with God, and the eventual redemption of humanity. So tonight I wanted to take a look on this idea of creation. And what Kat has put in is a source sheet that I put together of a few of the traditional commentators, mainly Rashi. Rashi is a medieval French Jewish commentator. And interestingly enough, for those of you who are interested in languages, some strange medieval French words we know because of Rashi's commentary on the Bible. And Rashi draws from a lot of the Midrashic tradition in his commentaries on the Bible. And then I put in a few other commentators there as well. We're not going to actually look at that, but that is for you for your reference in the future and perhaps to jog your discussion. And what I want to do is actually have people break out and together go through the creation stories in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, which I've slightly edited for some space. They are a little long, and really focus on what do you think is different within each story. What are sort of certain things you notice that are important, and then what is different between the two different stories here. I'm going to do something also very much from Jewish tradition when we study text. Normally, when we study text and we do these things, it's not just read alone. What you do is you often try to read these texts aloud, or you might read it silently, but you do it with a partner and you discuss the things as you go along. Ideally, and we're crunched for time, but ideally you would read through each verse of the first two chapters of Genesis and notice what's going on and sort of break up your discussion and say, hey, I noticed this thing here, or I noticed that thing there. So what I'd like you to really focus on as you read it, though, are a couple of things. What are the two differences between the two chapters? How do you get the sense of the structure as to how they work, each of the two chapters? And also, what about the creation of humanity in both chapters? The creation of Adam and Chava, Eve, and how does that operate? And what does that tell you? And what are those tensions that are there? And with that, I actually want to make it interactive in that way. So I want to actually have people break out into breakout rooms of pairs to go through and actually like talk through what's going on. And, you know, very not Quaker, like argue through what you might think is going on here, which is a very Jewish way of approaching things, and really get involved with this text and maybe even come up with your own sort of creative solutions as to what's going on here. I don't think that the creation story is there to tell us exactly how the world was created. Shadal also says that too. It's not about science, but it's about something else far deeper, I think, about human nature and human morality. So what we'll do is we'll break out and then we'll come back after about, I guess, 20 minutes or so, or around 8, a little after 8, I'll check and see where people are. And we'll talk through things. We'll have a little big discussion, and then I'll give some final thoughts there. So I hope you enjoyed what we call that is Chevruta study. Chevruta from the term meaning chevre, friend or something. Often we break out into study partners and read texts aloud and literally argue over that. Bible with commentators, Talmud, which is a big thing with Jewish law and a lot of other stories. So that's I also wanted to bring that practice because that way of doing text study is also an important spiritual practice within Jewish tradition. So what did people find out? What did your groups talk about? What did you notice? What did you all notice in your groups and sort of coming back that you reflected? You know, these are stories we all think we know very well. And often I think sometimes sitting there reading it aloud and talking through it with someone else also brings out something new. And also that discussion may have also, you could have pushed each other into developing new ideas, new interpretations or understandings of that. So I want to open up the floor for people to share what their group said. Yes, Jen, of course.
Oh, folks can see me. One of the things that Jude and I were just talking about, the first story, the God is the determiner of what is good. God is like, this is, you know, let there be, like deciding what there is and making the choices and then deciding that they're good. And in the second story, there is no, you know, necessarily, it is good language right off the bat. God creates, God determines after creating man, it is not good in 2:18. It is not good for man to be alone, and then makes stuff for the man, and then for Adam, no fitting helper was found, and we don't know who determined what the fitting helper was. Was it the Adam, the Adam, or was it God? We don't know what God's agency was in that creation or that noticing. And here, like God, it wasn't good. God created these things and they were not fitting or not good, which is really different from the first one.
Great. So Jen picked up on this notion of good. In the first one, God is the determiner of good. God says things are good. And in the second one, there's a notice that God makes that it's not good, but it's certain things are not determined necessarily by God as to what's good there. So great. I think that that's really useful. Did anyone notice at the end in the first chapter, each day, right? God says, it's good. It is good. It is good. What happens on the sixth day of creation? What is God's statement there?
Very good.
It is very good. So what does that mean too? Did anyone talk about what very good might mean there too? Why is there a deviation on day 6?
I'm wondering if, hi, it's Vicky in the corner over here. I'm wondering if, and this is like because I'm a chef and I watch way too many baking shows, but it's like, you know, kind of like the iterative like layers of making a detailed pastry. So it's like you make the dough, that's good. You make the filling, that's good. You put it together, that's very good. And then you bake it. Right? So like maybe it's just like this is a step that's closer to like this is complete, this piece of art or this drawing or this dinner. This thing that is in process is getting closer to complete, and you can like almost see like the final form there. And I'm like, I'm reaching a lot here, but like this is what's coming up for me.
No, that's actually a very good thing to notice. And actually there is a strong tradition in some Jewish traditions that the idea that it's very good is this sense of completion, that there is a completion of everything. Judah, did you have something?
Well, I was gonna say it kind of sets us up for the, I think, the idea of the Sabbath or the Shabbat, because it's like Vicky said, so then if the world, it's basically cooked. So if we're basically cooked, then that would set us up potentially for a day of rest.
Right. So as you notice too, it sets it up for Shabbat, the day of rest. The beginning of chapter 2, the first 4 verses of chapter 2 really should be in chapter 1. One thing that you'll note, verse breaks are actually from Jewish tradition. Chapter breaks are Christian. And the reason that they broke up chapter 2 into where it is to actually de-emphasize and separate Shabbat from the rest of creation. Because of course, in the Christian tradition, there was the move of changing Shabbat day that it was to Sunday based on, you know, other things that were going on. So there was that move that happened there. But you'll notice that it does have this lead in. There's one other thing. One of the other things that is in Jewish tradition about very good is, and I was saying this with Kat as we were going through it, there's a midrash that often says, God says that it was good regarding man because it was good. That refers to man's good inclination, but very refers to the evil inclination. That the creation of both the good inclination and the evil inclination is necessary for man to be complete. And so that's another reason why potentially, or at least some have interpreted that as well. So anyone else notice anything both within each story or the differences between the stories there that you saw? I think Jen had a really good point of God like saying things